Kris, it's my turn to bring you onto my podcast now. So, Kris, thank you so much for coming on. And sorry it's taken so long. It was just crazy before Christmas. But thank you for coming on.
Good to be here. I could have you on my show on Fridays. I mean, you're a fantastic guest. So I'm really looking forward to the ride of, you being the host.
So Kris, before I kind of dive in and kind of grill you.
Yeah.
We're all obviously unscripted and I like that way. Do you want to just kind of introduce yourself? What do you do? Why does it matter?
Okay, so what I do is I help you with your team, your time, and your toolkits, and I help you have a business that supports your life instead of consuming it. And I think why it matters is because life has interruptions, things happen. And I also think that if you're doing this, you're pursuing your dream, you're having a business, I don't think it should come at cost to your health, your time, your family, or anything like that. I think it should just enhance your life. And we all heard that freedom lifestyle when we started it, and you've seen people when you're like, hey, you're starting a new business. They're like, yeah, I want to spend more time with my family. You feel like saying, well, good luck to you, right? And that should not be the case. So I think what I do is really important because I deal with entrepreneurs that have been in business like 10 plus years, and they're just working way too many hours for where they are at this point in their journey.
It's funny, isn't it? Because when your business is your baby, you don't mind putting the investment in, but when your child should start to become self-sufficient, it starts to become like, why am I still having to do this? Yes. So why do you think, I did a poll the other day about why did you start your business? And every time I do that poll, people say, the number one reason is more freedom and flexibility. Why do you think that's why people start, that they always struggle to get it?
That's a great question. So first of all, I always kind of laugh at that. People say, I want to be my own boss. And I think that to me right off the bat, we're on the wrong page. Because I think you had one boss when you had a job. If you've got 10 clients, you got 10 bosses, right? Mm-hmm. So you're not your own boss. It's kind of like when you're a little kid and you think, oh, I can't wait to grow up and make all my own decisions. And you're like, yeah, good luck with that, right?
And then when you become an adult, you go, I wish I was a kid again.
Yeah, you're like, okay, the government is not very flexible. And, I thought my mom was difficult, but okay. So what happens is whatever you do and you love doing and you're good at, and you get all excited and you think, okay, whatever, let's say, you help people with LinkedIn or you're a marketing strategist, whatever your talent is, whatever your clients are paying you good money to provide that service. You think, okay, I'll do that. And then you go, when you start your business, oh, wait, but hold on. I just got to get the website up and sort of sidebar thing. Oh, wait, I just got to do this. And oh, wait, I just got to do that. And unfortunately, you didn't start a business to run a business. You started a business because you had a talent and an interest that you wanted to explore and share with people, and you felt you could do really well. And then you start trying to wedge the creating, the growing, and the evolution of the business in between the cracks. I had a client of mine, and he was a lawyer, and his clients were like the big international banks of the world. So here's this man coming to me, lawyer, dealing with international banks. And I'm not going to lie, for a minute I'm thinking, sir, what is it you want my help with? What can I do for you? And he said, Kris, I went to law school and I learned all these things, but he said, I don't know how to find, hire, onboard talent. And they didn't teach me that in school. And I'm just doing it in between the cracks of my real work, right? And so that's the problem is the building of the business, the scaling, the growth, the sustainability, what to do next instead of just having running on the spot, reacting and pivoting all the time. All that important stuff that gets you from one client to 10 clients to 20, or can you manage more? That's the stuff you're doing in between the cracks. And it's not the stuff you were trained for. It's not your expertise. And so that's where you just keep thinking, once I get past this next thing, things will be different until you finally say, hey, I've been saying that for 10 years and I'm starting to get tired of hearing that.
And do you know what? Because I started my business as a solopreneur. And one of the biggest challenges I had is wanting to do the client work and also wanting sales and also wanting to do the marketing well but also kind of resenting the fact that I didn't have time to do any of them well enough.
Yeah.
And I found, and I don't know whether this is common for the clients you work with and the people you help. Some days I would finish the day and I would be absolutely exhausted. No, I've still got more work to do, but I'm tired and going, do you know what? I'm not going to do any more work, but my task list was so big, I'd feel guilty about switching off.
Yeah.
Like I was letting myself down because I was not working into the evening every night because I couldn't keep up. And I think that is like, I mean, there's the objective way of looking at it. It's just a task list, and you'll always have a big task list. But actually, the mental toll of having so many things left unfinished is kind of unreal.
It really, truly is. And you're tapping into a number of incredibly important things. What you're talking about, Dean, is for everything you're doing, there's pre and post work. I don't care what you do. There's always pre and post work. I don't care how important your work is. You could be a brain surgeon. There's pre and post work. And so for many of us, like you're talking about there, is that you're getting, all gobbled up in the web of admin of the pre and the post work. And so the amount of hours you do in a day of your true work that's going to move the business forward, that's going to, keep your clients satisfied, that's going to bring in revenue might be 2 hours because you're running around doing all this other stuff. It's kind of like when I moved into my recent home and I was going to paint it. And I had not done that before. I lived a blessed life. I never had to paint before. So all of a sudden I'm learning how to paint. And I'm walking around like I just discovered something. The amount of work prepping for paint, it's like the painting is easy.
Yeah.
It's the prepping the room, right? You're like, really, it could take you all day to prep the room today and they'll paint tomorrow. And it's just a proper nuisance. And that's what we do with our business is you feel guilty because in your mind at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, when you're starting to get fatigued, you got decision fatigue, your tension residue is eaten up, you're just tired and bagged. But in your mind, you haven't really started the real work today. You sort of clawed through this web of admin, and now you're like, I never really got to anything of substance. My to-do list keeps growing, which that could be a whole show in itself because it is open loops. It's hard on the brain. There's a Zeigarnik effect. There's a whole bunch of reasons why myself, my clients don't have to-do lists. When you have things set up effectively, there isn't a to-do list. Doesn't mean you don't have things to do. It means it's set up strategically in a different way because a to-do list is just really like if you're building a cabinet and you look on the floor and there's a bunch of nuts and bolts left over, that's what a to-do list is. They shouldn't be left over. There should be a place for them. So you hit some trigger words for me. But for my clients or myself, I start work refreshed and I leave fresh. And that's when your time is leveraged and strategic. Because up until then, Dean, your only formula was to go faster and work longer.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I've tried to do, in fact, I mean, I've got a team now and the team know how I work. So that's quite good. But often I found some of my hiring mistakes in trying to get help is not being able, and so there's two parts. In my early part of my business, when I was a solopreneur, I hired help. And actually what I found was it took me more time to do the work hiring the help. And I vowed I would never hire anybody ever again. And now my team do the hiring because they joke that I'm a bad person to choose and hire. But I've met a lot of people who go, do you know what? I need some help. And what happens is they create people who are totally dependent. And I did this. I created people who were totally dependent on me. And actually, I ended up helping them on top of what I was doing. And I eventually reached the thing, do you know what? It's quicker to do this myself. Given that you work with so many business owners, is that just me and a handful of others? Or is that like a common thing that people go through that kind of, it's easier to just do it myself?
No, and back to my early example when I talked about that lawyer, I said to him, he's like hiring and stuff. And I said, well, that's like me. First of all, we have a 12-point hiring process with a 90% retention rate. So we've been doing this a while. We've got it all very well established. And so I said to him, that's like me trying to practice law in between what I do. This whole hiring thing is a whole thing on its own. And then you run around with no experience or training or expertise or anything and try to do that behind the 8 ball when you're busy. Usually when the time you realize you need to hire someone, you should have hired someone a while ago. And then you pull from what I always say, don't hire someone you trust, meaning I've seen a lot of people where they're like, okay, well, my neighbor's daughter's fresh out of high school, or I got a friend on maternity leave, and they're hiring people they trust with no skill set because they don't know how to hire. And they just think, well, this kind of like this person will do you a favor to get you through a spot, right? So there's all these different layers of the ability to mess that up. And so what I would say is what people don't understand, or we've been so inaugurated on it, on the fact that the corporate world is a very parentified system. So think about it this way. If I was really good at sales, the first thing they would do as a sales manager, they'd say, okay, Kris, you're really good at sales. We want you to be the sales manager. In the corporate world, they pull back my sales and they would give me more time to manage the people. And that's the opposite of what we're looking for as business owners, entrepreneurs, and founders. We want more time. We don't want to pull back time so I can manage you. No, I want more time to do my thing, right? And so that formula we've been taught, I don't care where you are in the world, whether you worked at a donut shop, it's a very parentified process where if your manager at work is going through a divorce, you're like, oh, daddy's in a bad mood, we have to be quiet, whatever, right? So that's the formula you had. Is the way it was set up, it took constantly more work for you to show them than it was. It's easier just to do it myself, which of course, is not sustainable, not scalable. You can't then keep increasing the amount of clients you take on. You can't leverage anything, right? So what I would say is fundamentally the setup is very different. And that's why we hired on board entrepreneurs, put them in our leadership program so that we're not following that corporate parentified formula, so that my clients always say, oh my gosh, I feel like I finally have peers. And in my case, I'll tell you, I'm the dumbest person in the room. If it was a public company, I think they'd take over and get rid of me. And I'm just thrilled to be in the room. And they're all, we're talking about the people who have been through my leadership program. They've been with me for years now. And like my clients are making, $5-6 an hour. So it's very doable, but we've been so embedded with the corporate formula, we don't even understand it.
Yeah, I think that is the ultimate skill, isn't it? How do I get somebody when you instinctively know, let's say it was admin for an example, but you're doing that admin over and over and over again. One of the things I come really unstuck with is I want to delegate this task to somebody else. And I can tell you what that task is, but getting you to do it to the standard I want and doing that kind of mechanics so that the person actually delivers what I want, that's really tough to do. Everybody says, oh, you have to delegate properly. But if you Google anywhere, how do you delegate properly? Anywhere on Google, it's basic generic advice.
Yeah, that's my pet peeve.
It's like, so how do you, don't give all your gems away out of your leadership program, but I'd love to.
Anything but my weight.
How do you actually delegate something so that it gets done and it gets done the way you want it?
So first of all, I don't love the word delegate. Delegate is a lateral move, which means the work still has to come through you at best. So it's a word I don't use. So what happens is with the leadership program, with our VAs, they're set up with our signature super toolkits, which is a whole different thing. Back to the corporate world, SOPs are created, and they're created standard operating procedures. They're created really just to cover liability. They're not written by the end user. They're very static in nature. And I've had jobs myself where I showed up and they gave me SOPs the first day. It's like, oh my gosh, there's training mixed in with it. It's just a hot mess. It's not something that actually trains me on the job. So again, how we've been trained in the corporate world is problematic with the philosophy of delegation, with SOPs. So when you have, it doesn't take a lot, but when you have a setup that's streamlined, then you've got things like our signature super toolkits, which are really just dynamic breathing documents. And yes, it's not something I can show you how to do in these few minutes here on the call, but I can give you something really simple. when you're bringing on a VA and you say, okay, I have to do something, Dean, you say, well, I got to do this today, whatever. It's something I do every week. Great. Then create a screen capture, use Loom, it's free. And as you're going through the steps that you have to do anyhow, show and tell what you're doing. And then they can do that next week. Don't try to write out steps. You're going to miss steps. You're going to forget things. It's just not going to fly. But if you're doing the work anyhow, then you got a video, and that could be the start to our streamlined process. That will make such a difference. But really, it's the philosophy of not having them delegate, but that we're assigning work to them that isn't going to have to come through you. So there's just a lot of little nuances there. It's not rocket science, but it is strategic.
Mm. You see, I'm like that when I try and write out any kind of instructions for somebody. And I use Loom, but do you know what? I've never done that, even though it makes total sense now to just literally record yourself doing it. What you said there about that whole in corporate, there's SOPs that are kind of like training. Like I use Loom all the time for my stuff on LinkedIn and sending prospect stuff. But then one of the things I found when I was trying to I'm going to write how I do this, I actually get lost in telling people what training and versus explaining the task.
100%. That's exactly my point. So here's a sort of quick example. I went into Home Depot and all I needed was a door inside my house for one of the rooms. And I'm standing there, full functioning adult with this house I live in. And they're like, is it a left swing or right swing door? And I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, well, when you lean forward, do you swing it left or right? I'm like, I don't know. They're like, well, do you swing it out? Do you swing it in? I'm like, I don't know. Right? And if somebody had recorded that, here's the door, I would have answered 100 questions. And my point is, you get confused when you're reciting things off memory and you just miss steps. You're like, oh, and they'll come back next week and ask for a password, or you miss this step. If you're doing it, so simple, you're doing it anyhow. Just do what you do and talk out loud as you're doing it. Don't explain, don't go down the rabbit hole. Just do it as if you're always doing it, record it. And that's step one. And that's the problem. Sometimes people come with me and they're like, they'll come to me and they'll say, oh, Kris, no worries, I got SOPs. A recent client did that. And she wanted me to, she's like, hey, let's on board and I'm going to save you some time because, you'll find me a VA, but I got these great SOPs. I'm like, let me see them. And it was a 52-page manual on how to post on social media and all the different platforms. And what they don't understand is that then the VA has to go in there, extrapolate all the information, interpret it, and make new manuals out of it, which not only is time waste and counterproductive, but also then when that person leaves, they had made their own systems. So now you're starting over. So that's the problem with that. So you are right. That's where people go wrong. And I need time to make it. So I'm going to wait, or I'm going to come in on the weekends and then I'll find the VA. And then I found the VA and I gave them the SOPs and it didn't work. None of that works. That's why we do what we do. Yeah.
And that's where you go, this person isn't working out.
Yeah. It's not them, it's you.
Or worse than that, it takes you 3 to 6 months for them to figure it out. Yes. And then they're really good at it. But how much did that cost you in time to get out of all that stuff?
100%. And that's why we do what we do. And why we're on that subject, here's something you may not even know enough to ask. And forgive me for saying that. I say that because it's not your area of expertise. I don't mean for that to come across as condescending. We're not an agency. What we do is we find, hire, and onboard virtual assistants. And then we put them in our leadership program for someone like you. And then we work with you, because the agencies, there's a lot of problems with that. And they've been popping up really aggressively in the last 5 years. First of all, not only are they incredibly expensive, and then if you leave the agency, you lose your VA, whereas with us, you pay the VA directly. We take no clawback on that. Also, the VAs have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. So you think you're paying them $5-6 an hour and they're getting $2, and they cannot tell you that. But when you leave that agency, you lose that VA. And sometimes they will also take that VA and move them to a higher, more prestigious new client that they got. So you're really renting that. But more than anything, if you learn one thing today, more than anything, they don't know anything about you and your business. And so they are just giving you a VA for billable hours, But it's like me sending a chef to your house, Dean, saying, this is a great chef. And you're like, Kris, that's fantastic. But this Italian chef doesn't do well with my family who likes barbecues, right? So they don't know anything about you. So the real work, you're right, Dean, you're highlighting a lot of things here. The real work is us working with you so that you have the skill set and the setup to get the best out of these VAs and to keep them.
I'm going to share a little story with you here. And you're right about the whole VA, the VA business, shall we say, has been sold to an opportunity. I'm going to be a bit ageist here. To a lot of 20-something people who start these businesses, finding people in the Philippines and India and basically going, you know, we can put setters, social media people into your business. And the greatest respect to some of these young 20-somethings that are doing this, you know, they're entrepreneurial, but they've never actually run a business. And so the nuance of, you know, I had a difficult experience with somebody where they put somebody in and we specified the hours they wanted to work. They didn't really vet the VA very well. And that VA was actually doing a full-time job in the hours that they were hired for us, and they were catching up on our work in the evenings. And it's like the VA business has been sold as this opportunity to a lot of young people who don't even, some of them, sorry, I'm going to be really ageist now. Some of them have never actually done a job. They come straight out of college and saw, well, college is a scam. Let's start a business. And, you know, not all of them are bad, but if you want a good person, you need somebody that knows the pitfalls of doing this for lots and lots of different businesses, not just like I can find a person and I can find a customer. It's like, it's the fit.
We only hire VAs that have worked with small businesses. Absolutely. I mean, Peter, another client of mine, he said, Kris, I burned through like 4 or 5 VAs before I met you. And he's had the same one now with us. Of course, he's had the same one for us for the last year. But I have clients come back all the time. They just want to check in with me and show me what they've done since they've moved on. And they always have the same VA, you know. One client, Christine, she came to us. I'm not sure if I shared this story with you. And she was referred to us by somebody else. And I'm not saying it's okay, but these things happen. She missed her first appointment. And sometimes that happens because there's such a hot mess with their calendar and they're so behind the 8 ball, and that's fine. So, all right, we got rescheduled. She missed the second one. And I was like, okay, we're done. But she sent me a heartfelt email and I knew who referred her to me. And she said, please. So we met and she said, I don't know how you'd help me because I deal with businesses that are $5-10 million in revenue and I get them ready to sell with their systems. Like, how can you help me? There's just too much work. And so many of my clients are so accomplished and they're the go-to person for a lot of people in their life. They think you don't get it. There's just too much work. And I'm like, well, I haven't failed yet. So I didn't even know this at the time. She shared later how she had been on medication because her cortisol was so high. She wasn't sleeping. She was working crazy hours, all this other stuff. Within the year, her income, as it always does, went way up. She said it went up 4 times. Her hours cut way back because your income goes up because you're not diluted running in different directions. You're getting to the real work that brings you money, right? So the income went up, the hours went down. And within the year, she went to Costa Rica for a month with no Wi-Fi. And our VA, and I call it the VA we found her, but it's her VA because it's a team. I call it VA is really a team is philosophy, not a number. You can have a team of one. So her VA, the team we created, ran the business while she was in Costa Rica. And now she travels all the time. And this same person years later, the VA we found her runs that business. So it really is about the setup. If done correctly, you can do magical things, but adding people to chaos does not create calm.
And so curious, how did you get into doing this, Kris? How did you get here?
That's a great question because it's not just like, oh, I'm organized and this was my passion. I started my business, 14, 16 plus years ago now. And my focus was on marketing, and my market messaging. And the first couple of years I was in business, I worked insane hours. And my husband said I was always stealing from sleep, getting up earlier and earlier, staying later and later, right? And I thought speed was my superpower. Like, I am a recovering rushaholic. I thought that's how you get stuff done, right? So about the 2-year mark, my husband told me I was losing some of my charm because I was a little cranky and tired all the time. And that did not bring out the best in me. So I could not have that because this man cheered me on with everything I did. And I was like, oh, this cannot be. Like, this cannot be, right? So I really worked hard on this. I literally went from working 16 hours a day down to 6. Now, this did not happen overnight. This is a whole story on its own. But luckily I did, because a couple years after that, I was pulled away from the business for about 2 years when my husband was diagnosed with colon cancer. And when I returned after his passing, my existing clients had no idea of my absence. It was just not how we navigated his journey. We were very positive in nature. And so people kept coming to me and saying, how could we have possibly not known that you were away? And if you could do that, maybe it'd help us, spend time with our friends or family, see our kids' soccer games. And so I started working with them under that capacity. And I started to realize really quickly the people who needed me most looked really good on paper. They'd been in business 10 years. They've got accolades. They might have a book, a podcast. They're speaking on stages, but they're still working way too many hours for where they are at this point in their journey. And so I started taking what I did, and that's how it came to be where I wrote the book, Win the Hour, Win the Day. And it kind of just kept growing from there. And that's how I sort of fell into this.
Mm-hmm. It's weird, isn't it? How, like, you start a business and then, I started as a marketing consultant.
Yeah.
And websites and all this kind of stuff, and absolutely overwhelmed. And then somebody said, oh, can you do this LinkedIn stuff for us? Can you do this LinkedIn stuff? Until eventually, just by chance, almost the LinkedIn thing just took over everything.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like your story, isn't it? You got really good at doing all this kind of organizing people and that bit because of your own issue of overworking. And then you solve it. Now, I'm curious. I've got one final question, then we'll wrap up. I'm going to ask you to share where people can reach out to you to kind of grill you themselves about how you can help them. How do you overcome the trust factor? And by that, I mean you're hiring a VA and you probably need to let them into your emails, your social media, all of those things that are like, this, but there's distance apart. All of those, how do you get over that trust factor when you're hiring somebody who's working, maybe on the other side of the planet?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, something I want to circle back and say, you talked about being, what you do with LinkedIn, and that's exactly it. Is when you have a VA and you have a team, I do think everything you teach us with LinkedIn is incredibly important, and you want to have more time for that. That is not something that I need to network. I need to stay connected to you. I need to be meeting other people on LinkedIn, and that's not something I can rush and do once a week when I squeeze it in between all the other things I'm doing. So that's why I believe in having a team. Again, it's a philosophy, not a number. You can have a team of one so that we can do the important LinkedIn stuff. And to your other point, I get this question asked a lot, trusting. And I think, well, isn't that interesting? First of all, you do have things in play, and we do have a 12-point hiring process. And I will tell you, in this day and age, and I've been doing this a long time, and I work with clients around the world, all over the world, and we've, helped hundreds of entrepreneurs. The only time I've ever had a trust issue was when I had somebody in my office when I started my business, and she stole money out of my drawer. Well, I still I moved twice and I keep checking that drawer and the money's not there. So the $900 is missing and she didn't come back in the morning. So it must have been her. But I'm still holding out hope. What I would say is this: we live in a world that frankly is virtual. And I don't care if they're sitting right beside you, whatever they're doing. You have to trust who you're working with, and you can put some things in place. And also, I would argue that a lot of the stuff in the beginning doesn't have to have big barriers of trust that they have to overcome to do some work to get it off your plate, right? But so that's never been an issue. It's never been an issue with any of my clients, but it is a process. And I would also say, if you're unsure in the beginning, that's fine. I am certain there is tons of tedious things that just slow you down in a day that don't require a lot of security for them to help you. But we deal with lawyers and mutual fund business. And all kinds of people say, Kris, you don't understand my work. It's high security and I deal with high-end clients. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So do all my other clients. So trust is trust. And it was funny. I had this conversation many years ago, and she was a mutual funds person. She said, well, we deal with mutual funds and securities and bank. And what about trust? And I'm like, have you watched the news? Bernie Madoff thing. He was in the office. That's not a virtual problem, right? So I said, your industry of all industries should know, hey, trust isn't just about logging into the computer. So, it's never been an issue, and you have to be set up so that you do feel comfortable with who you work with. And that's the way we have it set up. It's never been a problem.
Okay. And Kris, obviously some people are going, I have had that challenge before. I've hired some VAs and made some mistakes. They've not worked out. I struggle to not delegate. Assign.
Yeah.
And they're going, but I know I need to.
Yep.
How would you help them, and what's the best way to reach out to you?
Well, Dean, most of us are on LinkedIn, so you can check me out there. You can go to freegiftfromkris.com, free, FREEGIFT, from Kris, KRIS.com. We've got some goodies there. There's always some fun giveaways that we're changing all the time. So you can grab there, but for sure, DM me, and I will tell you anything about my weight. I'm here to answer questions because I believe business should be fun, and it should support your life, not consume it. And it doesn't have to be as hard as you're doing it right now.
Awesome. So, guys, if you're thinking, do you know what? I need to get better at this assigning work. I need to focus more. I need to get support in the right place. Go and find Kris Ward. You'll find it, or come to my profile, search there. I can direct you to Kris as well. But you've got to, if you want to grow and you want to keep your sanity, you've got to find a way of managing the work. And, if you want to grow, you can't do it all yourself. You're not superhuman, not unless you sacrifice freedom and flexibility.
You'll burn
Kris,
out.
thank you.
Even without the freedom, you would burn out so many times. It just doesn't work. Costs you a lot of money.
Yeah, 100%. Kris, thank you so much for coming on. I think we'll get you back and we'll talk about that. I think we should talk about some of those issues around how do you map out those tasks that you need to stop doing. I think that would be a really good topic we should talk about, because I know the stuff I'm doing. I know minimum wage has changed here, but I'm doing the equivalent, the $10 an hour tasks, far too many of them, that I think I cannot possibly let go of. So I'd love you to come back on and we'll talk about that.
I got nothing but time for you, Dean. I'll come anytime.
Awesome. Thanks, Kris.